I think everyone who's been here, everyone who's here today has seen this. So I'm going to be brief with it, but I'll still, as we always do, start by touching on a little bit of the work that we do at Missoula Food Bank. And today we're going to talk about childhood hunger specifically. Our current site on South 3rd Street, hopefully for about 11 more months, fingers crossed. In 2015, 18,414 separate individuals came through the doors at Missoula Food Bank for food assistance, combining to receive almost 120,000 total services. When you think about that top number, that's 1 out of every 6 people who live here in Missoula County, and 40% of them came one time, and 65% came 3 times or fewer. So that really paints a picture of a family that is on a tight budget, but they're making it, and they have employment, and they have housing, and they have transportation, and their kids or their grandkids are in school, and they're just normal folks, and then there's some event that happens. And as they're fighting their way through a temporary job loss or a reduction in hours or an injury or an illness or whatever it is, they walk through our doors, and then darn it, they do get their feet back under them. You can see some of the populations that are especially in need. So about 1/3 of our services go to kids, about 14% are seniors, the same number are veterans, and we see a lot of folks who are living with disabilities or chronic illness. So Missoula Food Bank works to provide emergency food assistance, and I've touched on that first number. We do some special programs that we're going to talk about later on today, specifically around childhood hunger, but we also do some programs that serve homebound seniors. Our Roots program is a once-a-month delivery to homebound seniors. And then our general, the bottom bullet, those experiencing crisis, we would define a lot of the folks who walk through our store service as being in that scenario. There is a population that relies on the food bank in a more chronic way, more ongoing way. And so really that's the genesis of why we're doing this Food for Thought series, is to try to go deeper. It's one thing to talk about a family that is making it and that suffers a short-term crisis and comes through our doors, and I don't think anyone thinks that we shouldn't exist for that person. But when you start looking at families or individuals that are using the food bank as a part of how they survive, it points to this other thing that's wrong in our community. If your cost of living is higher than what your income is, what are the factors that contribute to it? How can we play a role in bringing partners together to address systemic change? What we do at Missoula Food Bank is not the solution to poverty and hunger issues in this community. And so let's talk about solutions in addition to talking about the work that we're doing. So Kelly and Jesse today are going to talk, they're going to give the program specific to childhood hunger. They're both on our staff and have worked a lot, Jesse for years, Kelly for 1 year, in developing and administering childhood hunger programs. So Kelly, yes.
So thanks for coming. We're really glad that you're here again. I just want to reiterate that Erin said that we feel like we're kind of talking to the choir here. So hopefully this can be conversational style. If you have any questions or have anything to add, let's learn from one another while we're here today. What we're hoping to do today is talk through some national statistics about childhood hunger and then really quickly whittle that down to Montana and to Missoula. We're most familiar with the need and the issue of childhood hunger right here in Missoula, and so we're going to focus most of our attention on that and the programs that we offer at Missoula Food Bank to address those issues. So we've seen some growth in some of those programs, and we hope to share that with you today. So here we are, childhood nutrition. We know that kids getting proper nutrition and really good food is critical to their development. So that affects their learning, it affects their ability to grow, it affects their ability to be emotionally stable, and long term, it affects their ability to thrive in our society. And so that is so important. That's why we think having this conversation about children specifically is really so important. There you go. 15 million children in the United States face food insecurity, so that's 1 in 5 kids. Think of that. How many kids are in your child's classroom? My kid has, 20 kids in his classroom right now. That means 4 kids in his very own classroom, suffer from food insecurity in their home. It's just staggering to me. Oh, you're up. Here, we're switching. We're going to do the switch back and forth.
So bringing it closer into Montana, 1 in 5 children in Montana and Missoula lives in poverty. And the poverty rate is, for a family of 4, $24,000. I can't imagine a family of 2 would struggle on $24,000 income. And imagining a family of 2 and children, that's the poverty rate. But most programs look at, and the USDA looks at food insecurity as being an income of 185% of the poverty rate or lower. So really, when we're talking about childhood poverty and 1 in 5 kids being in a low-income household, we're talking a much larger number that is food insecure. And so, as Erin said before, 1 in 3 of our store services benefits children, and that means 19,000 services benefited children in Missoula, at Missoula Food Bank last year. And what's even more staggering than this is when we look at our programs at whole, when we look at all of the community programs, the weekend backpack food and the kids table program that we'll go into more later, out of the 119,000 total services that we provided last year, 55% of them went to benefit children in this community. And so childhood hunger, I think that we all know, looks like, it might look like not enough calories, and even broader than that, it might look like not enough good food available. And so according to No Kid Hungry, 84% of households with children report that they buy cheaper food to make sure that their kids have enough calories, rather than buying food that is nutritional and that is going to benefit their development. In 2015, we had a Vista who did a childhood hunger survey in Missoula, and her findings, there were 130 participants, and she found that, further indicating that people in our community are buying the cheapest food that they can in order just to make sure that their families have enough calories. Parents are skipping meals in this community, as reported by the survey that Paige did, so that their children can eat, and they're skipping bills so that they can put food on their household. And so this is it's real in our community, and we like to wish and hope that in this wonderful place that that's not the case, but it's real.
When I think of my personal circumstance, I have 3 kids at home, and even I will choose more affordable or cheap options because of a lot of reasons, right? Because that's what my kids are advertised to like, or that they're trained to like through advertisements. Because it sure stretches a long way when you get 10 ramen for $1, right? It's so quick, it's so easy, and I know because I'm educated and I've learned all this stuff, and right, I'm here, but it fills their belly in 10 minutes. Hey, you want a bowl of noodles that cost me $0.10? Here you go, right? There's no nutritional value in ramen noodles. Zero. It's like negative effect in all ways. And I know that, but it's real. And so when I saw the statistic, 84% of households acknowledge that they do that sometimes, certainly, because I'll lump myself into that group. And another story that I can share is we have a client that was willing to share her story with us at the food bank, and said by the time she spent all of her money on the necessities, so on her regular bills, on her cost of living, on all of those different things, she has enough money to shop at the dollar store. And so I just take that, if you think of that, and you're shopping at the dollar store, there's no real food at the dollar store. There's not. But there's this kind of food, there's food that's has no nutrients, there's calories there. And so I think that they're intertwined in a really big way, the idea of of bad food being so inexpensive in our country and in our community compared to nutritious food. And that's something that we try to contra every day when we make decisions for our kid feeding programs. So this is some really, there's a lot of numbers up here, but this is some really local data. The percentages that you see, you can see this is MCPS, so Missoula County Public Schools numbers. And the percentages, the enrollment is based off this year's enrollment, or it changes all the time, but this was like January numbers at each one of these different schools. But the percentages of kids that qualified for free and reduced lunch at each school is based off of last year's numbers, so 2014, 2015 percentages. And the reason that I'm pointing that out is because last year in our town, there were schools that were eligible then to be the orange schools, or the community eligible CEP programs at the schools. What's magical about that is that then anyone at those schools gets free breakfast or lunch at those schools. So it's a big deal when a school can qualify, because that could break down the barriers. These, the percentages that you see here, so that's the percentage of people that applied for free or reduced lunch. So it's certainly not the number that qualify, because some people would never apply for assistance. Some people, they live in the most insecure home in all ways, and they don't have the gumption or the wherewithal to be able to apply for that kind of assistance. So what I think is important about this slide is that you can see that at every single school there is a need. Every single school, every single neighborhood, every single classroom has kids that are hungry right here in Missoula, Montana, or kids that live in food insecure homes. And so that's so important. CEP schools are a big deal for us, are a big deal for our community, because it breaks down a lot of those social barriers and the stigma associated with, are you a kid that gets free lunch, or are you a kid that gets cold lunch when they come? When everybody can receive it, it's much more likely that kids will all eat those meals and that they'll take advantage. I said this already, but it's real. When I started at the food bank a year ago, I really felt like I was in tune with my community. I'm in a lot of things, I'm engaged in a lot of things. I was involved in childcare in a real way, and kid programs in a real way. And the numbers are staggering right here in Missoula, that it exists everywhere, that many kids right here in the #1 place to live, the #1 place to hike, the place where everybody wants to move to, that's so expensive to live. There's hungry kids everywhere.
And Missoula Food Bank has identified 3 sort of gaps that the great thing about Missoula County Public Schools and schools in general is that for breakfast and lunch every day of the week, children have the availability to eat breakfast and lunch. But
School days.
School days,
Yeah.
yes.
Mhm.
But we've identified 3 gaps that aren't covered by that service. And the first gap we want to talk about is after school. So as soon as kids leave school, we're not, according to the statistics, 1 in 5 children, at least, are going home to inadequate nutrition. And so we started a program this year called Kids Table After School, and it is a federally funded program. It's through the Child and Adult Care Food Program, and so we're reimbursed for every meal. And we're currently serving 15 different sites in the community. Right now, today we sent out 460 meals to serve children after school. And you can see down here that the sites that we're serving are primarily focused on providing services to children who are in low-income schools, or Boys and Girls Club is an inexpensive after-school program, and so they're primarily focused on children who are experiencing poverty. This year, we anticipate serving 35,000 after-school meals through this program. And we couldn't do it without the support of the after-school sites. We do the food part, and they do everything else. And so I get to talk about fun things that come of this. And because it's a federally funded program, we are required to provide 5 components for every after-school. We call it super snack, but really it's a meal. It's if kids don't have the food that they need at home, we know that at least they have had adequate nutrition and a supper essentially before they go home. And so each super snack or meal provides protein, it provides carbohydrates, 2 fruits and veggies, and milk. And so tomorrow the menu is cucumbers and hummus and pita chips and mandarin oranges. And it's really fun. I do site reviews with these three site reviews with each site, and it's fun to go and be a part of that because you get to sit down and watch kids enjoy the food and know that it's good, healthy food that's going into their bellies, and it's very well received.
A magical component of our Kids Table After School program is the volunteers that help us pack and prepare this food. And so we get this reimbursement for most of the sites that we serve after school, and we're able to stretch those dollars further and be able to buy the very most nutritious components and ingredients for our food because we have volunteers that are doing all the labor. They pack the food, they deliver the food, they do all of those pieces. They shelve the food, they get it out of the cooler, they do everything really. But that helps us to be able to stretch those dollars further, serve more kids. It's turned out to be really awesome.
Yeah. And the other cool thing is every Wednesday we get grapes or strawberries, and they're certainly the more expensive items. But the great thing about this program and about the organization is that because we are receiving these federal reimbursements, we're able to make some of those better quality decisions that children love. Mm-hmm. And we've been working with our intern doing a lot of program evaluation, and so she's connected with all of the site supervisors, and she connected with about 60 children, and 83% of them reported feeling hungry after school. So whether that's because they have lunch at 10 a.m. or they're super active, we all know kids are constantly hungry, and we've seen a significant drop in that since we started Kids Table After School. Site supervisors have reported less behavioral issues during snack time, higher attendance at snack time. Kids are really excited about the food. They're more able to focus. And we have one particular site supervisor at one of the lowest income schools that provided a testimony, and he said that even when he's got one particular child who, even if he's not in program, he comes and asks every day after school if he can take food home. And that's just a huge indicator that there is significant food insecurity going on in that household.
When we talk about the gaps, so after school is definitely one of those gaps. Some kids, even if they're getting free lunch in the cafeteria that day, their lunch could be at 10:50 in the morning, it could be at 11:30 in the morning, and then they get out of school at 3:30, and to think of either they're waiting maybe till a parent gets home or they're waiting till the next day at breakfast time. That's why we decided to go for the big super snack meal to make sure that we really give them, a full meal while they're there, and it's all really good stuff, so we're not concerned about them eating it all or eating too much or any of it because it's all such great nutritious food. So summertime is fast approaching, right? Summer's another big gap area. So just like I mentioned, kids are used to, or a lot of kids are being reached in our school systems, getting free breakfast and free lunch and getting some food during the weekdays, all for 9 months out of the school year. And then summer comes and we have 3 months where that changes. And fewer than one in 5 of the kids that regularly eat free or reduced lunch participate in summer feeding programs. And so that has been a focus for us of how can we be more accessible in the summertime? How can we reach these kids that might be food insecure or more food insecure in the summertime? Liz gave me a statistic. Help me remember it, Liz.
That family household budgets for food increase up to $300 per month in the summer.
So did you hear that? Food expenses in the summertime for families that have children can increase up to or more than $300 in a month's time because all of a sudden they're paying for breakfast and lunch, right? So that just stretches so much, it just puts so much more pressure on a family. And multiply that out if you have more than one kid. It probably doesn't equally multiply, but it certainly does add up in some way. Multiply that out if you have a high schooler. Holy smokes. Or two. I'm looking at Steph over here, right? All of a sudden they're eating at home every single day, multiple meals, and they're home longer, and they nibble, and all of those things. So we're trying to focus on this gap, especially in our Kids Table summer program. So same scenario, we do the food side of things, but we need partner agencies and partner programs that connect to the kids. And so this one's, sorry, it's a little hard to see, but we have 10 summer sites right now. We may be looking at a few more this summer, but some of them are closed sites. So closed sites meaning children are enrolled in the program. We know exactly how many kids are going to be there that day, and we take them, or volunteers take them, meals. And these are lunches. They're a little different than the super snacks. They actually have a sandwich component to them. It's all cold food, but it's all really good food in the summertime. And then we have two sites, or we're going to have two sites this summer that are open feeding sites. One's here in this very room. We partnered last summer with the library. Partnerships with the library, that's really special. It's a really public place. It's really welcoming and inviting place, and accessible by buses and things like that. That's not the best. The bus scenario for some kids, depending on their age, is a good way to get places, but walkability is another big factor for summer feeding. So we're happy to have the library as a partner, and we're going to offer this summer at the Burn Street site. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I would love to.
It's new for us this summer.
So we partner with the North Missoula Community Development Corp. We've provided snacks and weekend food to them over the past several summers, and this year one of their goals is, or sort of their main goal, is to provide services to the immediate community there. The north side is we all know this, one of the lowest income neighborhoods and one of the most densely populated neighborhoods. If you look at the Lowell statistics, almost every single child at Lowell School is low income. And so we connected with NMCDC this spring about the possibility of providing the first open feeding supper, and they are eager partners, and we'll be providing free dinner to any kid in the community Monday through Thursday at the Burn Street Bistro.
Mm-hmm. So another gap, right? Open feeding or summer feeding often covers lunch, sometimes covers breakfast. So covering this dinner component for us is a really big deal, and we're excited to take that on this summer. So we'll see how it goes. Tell everyone you know to get their kids if they need it. We also think that there's an opportunity in that supper hour possibly for parents to be able to bring their kids. So we know that it's on the north side, which is in a neighborhood that we want to be accessible in, but they can come from any neighborhood. It doesn't matter where you live, they can come from anywhere. So maybe in those evening hours, parents will be able to drive them or help them get there for a free dinner. I just want to say, that's okay. These are pictures from this room. They're so dark, but they're really great. You can see what our menus look like. It's fresh banana, it's fresh carrots, it's string cheese, it's good kid-friendly food that kids will like and enjoy. They walk through the line, they get a big lunch, and they get to eat it on their own. There's a little guy sitting on one of the tables in here that we set up. This program is also federally funded, and so sky's the limit, sort of.
Except for space.
Space and volunteers and logistics and all those things. But it's wonderful. It's wonderful that it's a funded program. We get reimbursed for all of the meals that we serve with our volunteer labor. Again, we're able to stretch those dollars so far. So we serve some sites that aren't reimbursable, and we serve some sites sites that are, and we're able to juggle that and really buy the very most nutritious food and serve as many kids as possible.
Do you want to talk about 17,000?
Oh yeah, I want to talk about, we served 17,000 meals and snacks last summer. Look at that. It's going to go up this summer because we're adding those sites. The last gap that we want to identify is weekends, right? Same exact issues. They could eat during the school week. Now maybe we're capturing them, they're eating breakfast and lunch at school, they're getting a good afternoon snack, or supper meal, and then on the weekends though, there's another gap. And so Empower Pack is our way of trying to meet that need. This is our second year of offering Empower Pack in Missoula, and we went from about 300 packs a week to over 500 packs a week. This program's not funded. It's not funded by the government. And so this is, we look for local donors, we look to reach out to our community, and of course the cause is so great. So we have a generous community that supports this pack, but the need is greater than we're currently serving, and we know that. So we're working really hard, putting some effort into focusing on this program, even though we've almost doubled in a year's time. So the idea is that it provides 4 meals in each pack. It's 4 meals that they get, 2 entrees, 2 breakfasts, some snacks, fresh fruit and milk. We have a partnership with Missoula County Public Schools. They help us with the delivery mechanism to most of the schools that we serve. Not quite all. We rely on volunteers to do the other portion of that. We have big parties. We have one this Sunday if anybody wants to come, or we'll set up a big assembly line, pack all of these bags. This year we did 6 builds, something like that. That's what we saw. 7-ish, not a lot. Next year we might have to do them once a month, but we get lots of volunteers to come in, really assembly line style. We build all these backpacks, and then we rely on our partners at the school. So again, back to that, we do the food side of things. We rely on others to help us identify the kids in need, and also for that connection point to the kiddos. So there's backpack ferries at every school that slip these packs into their, or these little bags of food into their backpacks on their last recess, and then they're in there on Fridays and they get to take them home over the weekend. Some kids take them home for younger or older siblings. We allow that. That's been a nice add-on for us if they're identified. This is not a qualifier program, so you don't have to meet any guidelines except to have somebody identify them as being living in a food insecure home or not having enough food. That could mean they show up on Monday agitated. That could mean they talk about having to share food with their siblings. That could mean all sorts of things. And we're glad that we're able to cast kind of this broad net and catch as many kids as we possibly can. 13 area schools participate in this program right now.
Which is all of the elementary schools and all of the middle schools at MCPS.
Mm-hmm. And
Hillgate Elementary too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we're getting to the end. Just want to reiterate that 1 in 5 kids in our community need your support, need our support. And we need your help. We want to now open it up to have some conversations about how could we get closer to ending childhood hunger. We're an eager and willing partner, and that has made us be able to serve more children. We can't do it alone, and we wouldn't want to. The component of being able to reach out and identify kids in our community that need food and that possibly are hungry, we're lucky to have the partners that we do. So we're glad for that. We made up. Liz helped us make up some
Liz made up.
discussion questions, but really we're a small group. We could just have a conversation if people want to. Any ideas? We didn't really plan this portion.
Let's, we are a small group. Let's circle chairs and just talk through maybe some of these and whatever other thoughts folks have.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Good, how are you?
We have certainly some other experts in the room. We talked a lot about the gaps that we've identified, but maybe we could take a moment to identify the other barriers.
Can I say something on the gaps real quick?
Yeah.
One of the things that we're doing with another gap that we've seen is weekends in the summertime. So we're partnering our backpack program with SFSP sites so that children can take home their weekend backpack food from the last day of summer.
Great.
It's very small. We only have 5 schools out of
Yeah.
99 during the school year. But it's kind of
Yeah.
our newer initiative that we're trying to.
Right. It's like a double gap in the summer.
And sort of like on the federal side or the statewide side, the discussion draft for the House CNR, the Child Nutrition Reauthorization, has been released, as I'm sure a lot of you know. And you know, one of the major barriers that we have in the state is rurality and access. And so I really encourage you to call all of the members, especially Ryan Zinke, and say we need the summer food bill to actually look more like the Senate bill because of the now in congregate provision, which basically means that kids have to a hard time coming to the site day after day or meal after meal. If they're, you know, lucky enough to get breakfast and lunch, they can take maybe a sack lunch with them. Or also, you know, do a backpack style program. There's a lot of opportunities for rural areas to be able to provide a lot of food all at once, as opposed to having the kids come to the site daily, sometimes multiple times a day. And so that's a really important part. Another, Kelly had talked about, you know, the increase in food. Summer EBT is another provision that's being limited in the House bill that would be not limited in the Senate bill, which provides about $30. Which doesn't sound like a lot, but they have done pilot studies that say that that's a pretty substantial amount of food being made up. So, you know, it's scary, but it's definitely congressional members listen to you, and so if you want to be brave, it is good to call your congressional members. They do listen. There are a lot of good things that come on a federal level that would really help Montana a lot.
Do you have an action alert that you could?
Yeah, I'll definitely share that.
If you send it our way, we'll forward it on.
Yeah, I will definitely share. And also, you guys had talked about CEP. That's another thing that's being threatened. You know, right now the federal regulation is at 40% schools can participate, but they're wanting to raise it to 60%, which would affect about half of those schools.
It's at 40% now.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was at 50.
40 is the lowest. Most schools operate between 40 and 50. So it's a lot of schools in Montana would be really negatively affected by these increases. So be mighty, be proud, call your members.
Kind of touching on that too, where you were talking about the problem with kids getting to the sites from rural communities. We were talking to the FRC Jen at Rattlesnake Elementary School, and she talked about a need she saw out there that really isn't being met in East Missoula, and there's just a lot of those kids can't catch a bus, or they just have other barriers. And I don't know if we could expand our very limited funded program or not, you know. But,
I think River Coat.
Yeah, I was just gonna say
Food
River
Bank
Coat.
out in East Missoula is planning to start SFSP this year.
Yeah.
And I think they also got a mobile truck, so they're gonna
Yes.
come in and serve at this met school.
And at Bonner Park. Bonner.
Oh, in Bonner.
In Bonner.
Yeah.
At Bonner. I don't think the reality baseball fields are in Bonner.
Right.
oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right there.
Right, the school.
Yeah.
Which is
So,
amazing.
Yeah, so hopefully that will, that will help with some of those.
right.
And we've had, Stephanie and I chatted about Bonner School wanting backpacks. And so again, we've so far been able to serve the immediate community, maybe not quite to the point that we would like to, but again, those rural communities are in desperate need.
What I think, what I've seen, it's weird in our world to boast about growth, because that sucks, because hungry kid, it's just sad that many kids are hungry in our community. But what I am really proud of is that sort of the conversation has opened up. And so we didn't go from 300 to 500 backpacks because there's more kids necessarily. It's because more people are aware that a resource is available, or more people are opening their eyes to the idea of identifying kids that might be hungry. And so I think that that's a good thing, because more people might call their senator, because more people are aware, right? It's really, when I said that, it was hard for me to believe that this many kids in my town, in my kids' school, are hungry. That's true. And I think that spreading the word that it's real right here is important.
Especially in my, sorry, are you done, Kelly? Really excited. But to the schools, I hear this a lot. Of schools who feel like they're too high income to have children in need. So especially to like talk to them and reiterate that, you know, despite what you think, there are probably hungry kids in your school, even though you might be a high income area.
Yeah, we talk about Cold Springs, which is an affluent school, and we serve backpacks to that school.
Yeah.
We talk about Hellgate Elementary in the same way. They have 1,200 children, and they estimate that 10% of those kids are in sort of chronic crisis and could use our services.
It's interesting from a management perspective, because at Missoula Food Bank, of course, I work with our board on budgeting and like scalability. And so, you know, as Kelly says, like some of the programs where we qualify for reimbursement, and we are able to use volunteer support that lets us maximize the reimbursable dollars so that we're able to stretch it and serve these other schools. And that's sort of magically worked itself out. So more growth in terms of service equates to more dollars coming in, which kind of has a negligible effect on the bottom line. And so the limits there are infrastructure and support and all those things. But for Kids in Power Pack, it's really, I mean, that's entirely locally and privately funded. And the growth is phenomenal in each pack. And we're good at sourcing food, and each pack still costs $4. So you say we're going to add one child for 40 weeks, that's impact, $160. And then you go, well, there's hundreds that still need us. And I'll just say that our board has had really interesting conversations in the like, we have to remain financially sustainable as an organization, and to not do that, there's an honest to God kid in our community that's going to go hungry over the weekend. And so how do you balance those two things?
Yeah, I have another question about that. So, I mean, it seems like the backpack program is like pretty stable with a lot of food banks. How do you guys know how they are? So none of those backpack programs are federally funded, I guess.
Do you want to touch base on that?
They're not. I work for Montana Food Bank Network, so
Right.
kind of what they do on a statewide level.
Right.
And they are privately community
Okay.
funded, all of them except for about 10 that MFBN funds, and those are the very lowest resource reservation communities that we know will never be able to sustain the level that they need to feed their kids.
Yeah, I think that like Jesse was saying, you know, there's kids even, so we work with a partner, you know, programs for after school program and or for after school kids table program, and to be able to serve those meals, but there's kids that come every day that might not be in that program that day that want these meals. And so that's just like a glaring reality of that kid needs food, right? But that's a limiter as well. So like you were saying, Tirza, that they have to eat those meals there, that it's required that they eat them where they're at. You know, you can't just pack that up and send it home and still get the reimbursement. And we feel like we're reaching a lot of kids, but if there was a funding source for weekend food, if there was a funding source where kids could take the meals home or take it to a sibling at home, it'd be a different game.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
We work with some of the summer programs and flagship programs, and they have free lunch at some of the schools, and the parents are sitting out waiting for the kids to come out, or the kids are walking. I think transportation is a huge issue. But I do see 100 kids in every classroom, and I'm in all the time in schools. And yeah, I think they need food.
And CACFP again has to be connected to an after-school childcare program, and so Flagship only has so much capacity. And so in the summertime, if they're serving 15 kids a day, during the school year there were 300 kids enrolled in that school, and same with after school. So especially in the elementary schools, when nearly every child is enrolled in Flagship, they only get to come once a week, which then again means that we are only able to provide them with that healthy meal once a week. And some of the sites that we serve, Boys and Girls Club, and we serve a Parks and Recs program at Russell, and those children can come every day, which is really what we want and what we're hoping for. And so we continue to, because of some limiting factors with our funding sources, we continue to have there are some gaps in our availability of
Do they
providing.
provide food through, because I'm thinking like at some of the programs, they've had childcare show up because those kids are going through a childcare program. So have you ever worked with a child program?
Yeah, so right
Or
now.
is that separate from
Yeah,
yours?
right now we work directly with the childcare providers, but we've had conversations of, could we make our open feeding sites, sometimes with open feeding sites, you know, it doesn't, those kids can come and summer rules are easier. And they can come and they can eat that meal or take that meal. Boys and Girls Club, for example, gets their lunches in the summertime from the Missoula County Public Schools open feeding site at Russell. So they just go over there, they get all their meals every day of the week. And so it could be another, you know,
So
stretch for
childcare could
us.
show up there and eat, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah. And so last summer, we had a couple of different childcare providers or camps that came specifically to eat here
Yeah.
at the library, which is great. Welcome anybody.
Are there other areas aside from the north side that you guys feel like aren't targeted during the summer, like actually would like to expand to, that like see a real gap in the summertime?
I think that, I mean, I'll just say my answer. I think the dream scenario would be that we had open feeding in every school.
Right.
Because then it's in every neighborhood.
Yeah.
And then, because we know we've identified kids in every classroom, in every neighborhood that have that, but as far as the very most needy, I think right now we're doing a pretty good job of being in there, but not us alone. Missoula Public Schools, us, River of Life, you know, there's some, you know, together, we as a community are reaching those neighborhoods. Walkability is such a big issue.
So what's going to happen? Because I know that Lowell and Franklin are getting remodeled this summer. So what's going to happen to those feeding sites?
Yeah, they found alternative sites that are pretty close to there. One's at Head Start and one's just a few blocks away from Franklin School is where they're going to have their site. So that's really good news. It's really good news for those kids that have been used to, you know, some of it's pattern, some of it's comfortability of being able, like, you know, the social pressures of walking in to get a free meal or being comfortable in doing that, and comfortable as a parent to let your kid walk or get there on their own. So
Is
So
there
you're
a site in
advertising that
Lolo?
where?
what?
Sorry, babe.
Go ahead.
Is there a site in Lolo?
There's not very much space in Lolo that's area eligible.
Isn't that interesting?
That's very
I was shocked.
interesting.
Yeah.
And so you have to, so the neighborhood has to be 50% or more free and reduced in order to
To do both.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to further touch on that, like Kelly said, walkability is really important, and so I think like DeSmet, they're so far out that how the closest open feeding site would be Lowell, and so the fact that River of Life Church is coming up with this incredibly innovative way to get food to those children, and Bonner and East Missoula, is certainly, those I think are the areas that if we wanted to talk about expanding, that we would want to look at outlying communities.
Have you thought about Silly Lake? Just because it's in Missoula County.
Yeah.
There is a site there.
Oh,
There
there's
Okay,
is
because I don't still know.
Yeah, there's a Missoula sponsor that sponsors Sea Lake. So there
Okay.
is one site there.
Okay,
I don't
good.
know if that's enough.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just wondered. That was just a thought.
Right, and I think that there are so many outlying communities really that we could, that don't. Tiers provided, did you build the report?
I did.
And so there's all of this really incredible statewide information about SFSP. Maybe you're smarter than I am about how many counties, well, in that area. We're good at different things. But how many counties in Montana currently don't have a single site?
So we have 13 counties in the state that have no, and we have 17 counties with only one for the entire county. So about half the state is severely to not served at all. It's very, very difficult. And so, you know, half of the state has a ton of it, and then it's slowly but surely, you know, decreasing. But one site per county is as you probably all know, not a young
No,
food.
our counties are
That's
huge.
impossible, right? So, yeah, it's definitely a concern.
And so part of what Tears does is outreach to community members, community partners in those underserved counties to help them figure out ways to make that happen.
And it's just hard, it is hard because resources are also limited in rural areas, just for a lot of different reasons. So Montana's a really difficult state because it's so generous, but it's just sometimes logistics. Just comes down to logistics.
Miles.
But if there are ideas that you guys have about ways that we can things that we can look at in this community, like the Sealy Lake idea.
Well, I just thought of that one because it's in Missoula County, and I know in my case, it's 60 miles one way. And so, it's not that I don't want to serve them, but the cost of serving them is so great.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a need, definitely.
Yeah. Right.
So,
And in communities like Sealy Lake, there may be one site and the town is very small, so it's walkable
Yes,
somewhat.
yes, yeah.
However, there's a giant highway that runs right through the middle of town.
Right.
And so if you've got, kids trying to cross the highway just to go get lunch.
I do think that we're lucky to have as many open sites as we
I
have.
agree.
But
Yes,
we've talked a lot about there's low-income housing complexes on one side of 3rd Street and small children, and there's 100 kids that live in this one particular housing complex. And yes, Franklin is very close, but 3rd Street's there.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I think that we're a very fortunate community to have as many open feeding sites that we have, but barriers exist regardless.
I think of Charlotte that way too. There's a low income housing, but.
What about like volunteer crossing guards?
Yeah,
In some
I
of
know
those
that.
spaces?
It's so sweet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
during
That's a good idea.
SFSP hours.
That's a great idea. It would be so sweet. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question too. So when you guys were doing the sites last summer, I don't know if you were able to track this at all, but were the majority of children arriving via foot or bus or? Yeah.
Most came with their parents.
Okay.
Most
This
of the
was our
kids-
only open feeding.
Oh, right,
site.
right.
Yeah.
So, and then the ones at the schools, that's mostly walking?
I imagined so.
Yeah.
Right. And like she said, the nice thing about that is that kids are familiar, they know where school is, and they know how to
Right.
get there, they know the way that they get there.
Yeah, the library partnership really came about because the libraries are just an attractive place to go anyway, and they're free. Anybody can come to the library, and so that's where this partnership's really magical. But it's different than neighborhood open feeding. Different and great, but different.
I remember last summer, I was getting ready to pack up and go, and 6 little kids piled out of a car, and they took almost all of the food that I had, and it was like, this is there's free internet access, there's free, it's a safe place for families who are low income or not to come.
Do you think Birch Street will have more, not have some of the barriers that maybe the library has? Do you expect to see mostly people in that neighborhood, or are you trying to do outreach?
I would say so, yeah. The Lowell open feeding site serves 100 kids a day. And because it's such a densely populated part of our community, I would anticipate that the children who come there are probably going to be walking.
We learned a lot in our first year, so we're gonna do more promotion, right? We were scared, we don't know how many. I got it now, we're gonna blow it up. Yeah.
What are the hours? I'm just curious for lunches, and what is the Birch Street?
So lunch is going to be 11:30 to 1, Monday through Friday. And Burke Street is 4:30 to 6, Monday through Thursday. And we've got really incredibly generous partners there as well, who are eager and willing to help in any capacity. They're going to cook soup for us. And
This year, the library, we're just enhancing our partnership because it's year 2, and so we're gonna have some programming available during the time that we're here. So is that the draw? Is the food the draw? Is there just a special mix in there of something to do beyond just eating that'll be great and accessible to any kid that's in the library that day? But we hope that that will be a another draw to get kids comfortable with the library and nutritious meals at the same time.
I have another question, so I'd ask them in a row. I was wondering, so you guys are like talking about promotion, how you're trying to like increase in the summer. So how are you trying to promote to children? I mean, that's difficult.
How's your marketing?
We're trying to get the word out in schools more this year. We're sending them home with magnets with all of the open feeding sites.
Oh, okay.
So I think that was kind of a step we missed last year, was getting that information out before school gets out, when it's easiest to capture everyone. So we're starting there this year.
And we'll put them in all 500 backpacks.
Yeah.
So magnets will go home, maybe duplicates.
We're gonna up our signage game, you know, maybe right at the sites, at least 2 one-ways that go by the library, but also maybe in the neighborhood, you know, near Lowell School or something, big arrow, something that says free supper,
And I assume
dinner.
like promotion within the food bank.
Yeah,
too, or-
absolutely.
And I think too, we'll lean on our partners more, a little more, like ask a little more of the library to help us promote it, and the same with, I mean, but Bird Street is wonderful with that as well, or, sorry, Northern Missoula is great with that, so.
So I was gonna mention too that some of the schools are gonna be undergoing renovations in the fall.
Right.
And I just learned that I registered my son for kindergarten, but he's in Lowell area that he's gonna be going to Mount Jumbo.
Yeah.
So I wonder what kind of, I don't know,
Right.
complications or challenges that'll create, but.
Right, for summer feeding, the district's come up with a plan to have a new site that's still neighborhood local for most of the kids that will be there. And then logistically for backpacks in the school year, we're gonna sort that out between now and then. And figure out what there's to do. But MCPS helps us to deliver most of those backpacks. Our volunteers will switch their routes, something like that. They'll still get that food home there for the year. I think it's only a year that they're planning to have them. Franklin's moving to Jefferson, so that's right by Central Kitchen. So that'll be really handy in a big way for us and for them. Yeah. Anything else?
A few more minutes. Chat here.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry. I know you guys might have mentioned this in the beginning, I was a couple minutes late. How do Missoula and Montana's rates, and maybe you guys, I know this too, for anyone, compare to like nationwide child hunger rates?
You know, they say that the statistic is 1 in 5
Right.
kids live in and it looks like Montana statistics are right there, a little bit above. And so instead of 20%, 22%, somewhere right in there, and so slightly above.
Okay.
Is that fair?
Yep.
I'm right on, you're right on. I probably stole that from her.
Yeah, we probably got it from your informational brochures.
It's actually 1 in 4 kids in like the southeast part of the country.
Yeah,
In
I
the
knew
lower southern states and stuff, that food insecurity of children's
It's
life.
higher, yeah.
And a lot of that's urban.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
dense
Food
and
deserts.
rural
Yep.
creates a problem.
Exactly.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Yeah, thank you for
I appreciate
coming.
Participation.